We believe that he was betrothed to Aisha at the age of 6,
Right,
but
right.
she was actually taken to his house at a much later age.
At age 9, right?
Yes, at age 9.
Taking a prepubescent girl, having sexual relations with her, that's what we refer to today as pedophilia, right?
Yeah.
I know that for me as a Christian, I would have a hard time considering Muhammad as a potential prophet, just given his his lifestyle or his morality, I guess.
What aspect of his morality and lifestyle would make you question his prophethood?
Yeah, probably the biggest would be
Marrying.
his sexual,
Okay.
his sexual lifestyle, like marrying Aisha, for
Okay.
example. Like, what are your thoughts on that? First of all, how do you agree that Aisha, like what the Hadith say, that Aisha was 6 years old when Muhammad took her
Okay,
to...
that's one misunderstanding that I say. Okay, so Islamically, we believe that once you have your menstrual cycle,
Right.
that you are a woman. And there's even historical records of people like King James, there's a version of the Bible that's called the King James Version, right? He married somebody that was around, they said, between 9 to 6 years old, or that's what I've read, right? So, there's also things as societal norms and societal morality. So what would be considered weird today was normal back then. And what was a very common occurrence is that once a girl became of age, they would be betrothed to someone, but not actually married or taken to their house until a much later age. So we believe that he was betrothed to Aisha at the age of 6,
Right,
but
right.
she was actually taken to his house at a much later age.
At age 9, right?
Yes, at age 9. And I believe that when the Prophet died, she was around 19. So, and I don't believe that Aisha didn't have any children. The Prophet only had children from 2 wives, which were one died before he married Aisha, and the other one was in that same time. So, yeah.
So you agree with the Hadith then that he was betrothed to her at 6 and then took her to his house when she was 9?
Yeah.
Right. And I by the way, I agree with you that people
back
did
then
get married younger back then.
Way younger, yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think it crosses a line when
Is that a certain
the woman
age?
hasn't reached puberty yet.
I mean...
that seems to be the case with Aisha. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the tafsir on that Hadith.
Basically, when I was learning fiqh, which is basic Islamic jurisprudence, there was scholars that they did consensual, they went far and wide, and they found what was the oldest and youngest that a person could have gotten their menstrual cycle, and they found out the youngest was 6 that was ever recorded, and the oldest was 15.
Okay.
So it is possible that she did. It could have been a later age. It could be because they also didn't follow the traditional Gregorian calendar. They followed the lunar calendar. So the way they depicted ages wasn't necessarily the same. So there's that, you could factor that into it as well. But I would say, as far as we know, Aisha was mature as a woman. Obviously there is precautions. If you impregnate an 11-year-old, they could have terminal bleeding for the rest of their life due to giving birth, right? But they were still able to procreate another human being, So I personally would never, marry somebody that young, Do I, at the same time, if it was a societal norm back then, we can't really question it because there were other historical figures that did the same thing. And I think it's kind of biased just because the head of, your religious pillar did it, that it's somehow, the only pillar that stands that, I can't agree with the whole idea of the religion. I have a friend, he's Cameroonian. He actually said, I want to convert to Islam. This is the one thing I could never fully, wrap my head around was the betrothal and marriage of Aisha. But he says everything else from, the beliefs and the morality is I actually really love Islam. I love the way that, there's a sense of community and you know what I mean? But he's that's just the one thing I couldn't wrap my head around. And I think personally, some people, it takes time. Some people, it's a journey for you. Me personally, every time that a Christian or a non-Muslim does come up to me with that argument, I always say, we believe that she was physically, mature. And at that point in time in society, it was a societal norm. So you can't really sit here and complain and cry about it,
Gotcha.
Back then, I'm pretty sure Virgin Mary used to wear a veil. You don't see Christian women wearing a veil. Do you sit and cry about it and say, why don't women wear veils today?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So I say at the end of the
So
day,
you say it was a societal norm.
yeah,
You shouldn't critique a religion because of the moral behavior of its prophet.
yeah, or not
necessarily?
even moral. I'd say just like it was more of a, it was like a social practice.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Do you think it was a moral social practice? If she hadn't reached puberty yet, do you think that would be immoral?
well, I don't think so because at the end of the day, her father was the one who asked him to marry her.
So
Because
even if she was a prepubescent girl, you still don't think
oh
it
no,
would be immoral to?
oh of course it would,
have
but we
intercourse
just
with?
believe she wasn't pubescent, and we didn't
Okay.
believe that she was 9 by the time she was taken.
Right.
You know, actually married, and at that time she was, you know, I've even heard narrations that people back then at younger ages they used to look bigger and more physically mature. I feel like there's a lot of factors that go into what is society, like what is acceptable in society and what is morally applicable or acceptable, I should say. So at the end of the day, man,
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, and yeah, it's. I hope that that's true. I hope that she had reached puberty already.
she definitely did
You know,
because Islam, it's you can't do that. It's part of one of the pillars of marriage that both parties have to be physically, you know, mature in order
Okay.
to have
Well,
any
yeah,
type of copulation.
Okay. Well, tell me what you think of this thing, because when I research this stuff, I try to consult the Muslim sources and understand what they teach about this stuff. And there's at least one hadith that talks about how she was playing with her dolls, right, when Muhammad took her to her house. Actually, I think I have it here. I'll share it with you really quick. So this is
Yeah, I've heard
this is from
that.
Sahih al-Bukhari.
Uh-huh.
6130 if you're interested. It says it says I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's messenger used to enter my dwelling place, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. And then in Fathul Bari, I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's a widely respected commentary on Sahih al-Bukhari. It says that the playing with the dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, I know that passage, and basically, I'd say that
You agree with the commentary on that?
the commentary is true, but from what I believe and what, you know, my teachers know and a lot of, you know, respectable scholars say is that there is 100% guarantee that there was no type of, you know, physical intimacy until she hit puberty, but she was betrothed and she was in the presence of the Prophet before she was, I say, I mean, also, if you think about it, just because, like, the Prophet was there, it doesn't mean that they did anything yet, you know? It could have just been by coincidence that, you know, and it doesn't even say whose house it was. The Prophet used to visit Abu Bakr, which was her father, and they were actually best friends. So he used to visit his house, vice versa, and it could have been in that time that he was at his house that this was, you know, narrated, because it was a self-narration. And yeah, I'd say you could look at it. There's a lot of other factors to turn into, but I definitely understand if you're reading this from your perspective, you're like, oh, wow, you know, like, they're playing with dolls. And then, you know, to play with dolls, you'd have to factor in the ages. You like have to be anywhere between 6 to like 10 years old. And you're like, okay, where they have puberty. So I completely understand your, your insight and your perspective. But at the end of the day, I wholeheartedly believe that, you know, the Prophet was a pious man. He was obviously the pillar and the founding father of our religion. So he wouldn't have done anything hypocritical. And if he said she was of puberty, then she was of puberty. There's no reason the Prophet wouldn't lie, you know. Before he even became a prophet, the entire city knew him as Al-Amin, which in Arabic translates to the truthful one. So I personally believe if the Prophet said that she was of age, then she was of age. If that narration just happened
Did he say that?
The narrations of when they got married by others, companions said that she was of age, and that's just...
Really? I haven't seen those, but...
There's one narration I know that a lot of people
Is it
don't
reliable?
know about. Yeah, I think it's in Bukhari. Bukhari is the most reliable source of hadith, which said that the daughter of Abu Bakr, I don't know if I'm misquoting or not, but she was of, you know, like menstrual age when she was taken to the Prophet's house. So, yeah.
Yeah, so for what it's worth, man, I don't want to misrepresent the Islamic sources.
No, you're fine.
And I don't think that I put this in my, you know, in the notes that I have with all these passages. I don't think I put on here when exactly. Oh no, it does. It does say that she was in the prophet's house. So that's why I was wondering if this was in the prophet's house. So this is from Sahih Muslim. This is hadith number 3481.
Muslim's also a credible source.
Yeah. So it says, Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, reported that Allah's apostle married her when she was 7 years old, and he was taken to his house as a bride when she was 9, and her dolls were with her.
Yeah.
And when he, the holy prophet, died, she was 18 years old.
Yep. As I
So
said
it does
before.
seem like that hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari would make the most sense in the context of the prophet's home, in which case she was prepubescent when she was taken to his home.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. For me, that's like...
I mean...
You would understand why that's tough, especially because the Quran
time,
upholds Muhammad as an example in a way that many of the biblical characters aren't. Like King David, for example, had a lot of flaws.
A lot.
He killed somebody to have his wife. Right? Had sexually immoral for sure. But the Quran lifts up Muhammad and says in Surah 33, Ayah 21, indeed, in the Messenger of Allah, you have an excellent example for whoever has hope in Allah on the last day. That Muhammad holds a place in Islam that I think is higher than any prophets hold in Christianity. I mean, obviously, Jesus, we believe, is God. That's higher than Muhammad. But, in terms of prophets, he's upheld as an example in ways that I don't think prophets in Christianity are. And so, for Muhammad, I think there are other moral flaws in my view that I'm seriously concerned about. But, taking a prepubescent girl, having sexual relations with her, that's what we refer to today as pedophilia, right?
Yeah.
It would be very hard for me to consider him to be the kind of prophet of God that Islam makes him out to be, right?
Before, but I will find that hadith that does talk about
sure,
her.
Send me a text it back to me. Like I said, I don't expect you to know everything off the top of your head, so it's totally, it's totally understandable that you might not.
I just know one of the things that is very hard is since the whole religion is text in Arabic, for you to do your own research, unless you were an Arabic-speaking person, which a lot of the atheists and other religious people were back then, you'd have to first get the original text in Arabic and then translate it yourself, which obviously you'd have to spend a couple years.
I'm definitely disadvantaged. I don't know Arabic. Unlike you, you know it. So.
I mean, you'd have to spend a good 2 years learning Arabic, then you'd have to get the original books of, Bukhari and Muslim, and you'd have to look through all of them and be like they have tables of contents, like they talk about, there's parts that talk about the Prophet's wife and so on, and then for you to do all of that, I don't think you'd want to do that for a religion you're not going to end up following, so it's perfectly understandable, but I will look into you said the historical contradictions and also the part about her being prepubescent, because that is that's the first argument non-Muslims always come, like, how do you feel about your prophet being a pedophile? I'm like, whoa, that's...
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to
No, I understand, but that's what people, that's what people say.
That's hard for me to, as a non-Muslim, see, it makes it difficult for me to consider Muhammad seriously, right? As the kind of prophet and example that Islam makes him out to be.
Yeah, so I perfectly, I understand where you're coming from, and obviously there's a belief system difference between us, but
Well, we'll just do this. Just focus on those two that we talked about. The Quran's apparent misunderstanding of the Trinity. Maybe do the historical error about Mary. And then, if you want to get back to me on Muhammad's, on Aisha, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Just any of those three, really. I've heard, Muslim apologists have an answer for everything. Sometimes there's multiple options. There's multiple different answers for all of these problems, right? The question is not are there answers; it's are these answers
credible and
plausible, right?
Plausible,
is this really the most likely explanation
for whatever
what seem to be errors in the text, or maybe they're just mistakes? Maybe it wasn't God's word, which is an option for a non-Muslim like me to consider, and that does seem to be the most plausible option in my view.
You're looking all of this from a logical standpoint, right. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. But dude, I really appreciate the conversation. You were awesome to talk to.
No problem, man.
Any final words, or I'll let you have the last word here. Is anything else you want to say while we're wrapping things up for today?
I'd say my message would be, if whatever religion you are, always seek knowledge, because I feel like the biggest problem, especially when debating people, is like, if I'm a Muslim and you're a Christian and I come to debate you and I know more about Christianity than you, the only rebuttal you can give me was like, you're not a Christian, you can't tell me what to do, right? Which is what I've gotten a lot. So I'd say Also, learn about your opposing argument. What's it called? Your opposing defendant's beliefs. You shouldn't come here guns a blazing, knowing 100% about my religion and know nothing about the other. You know.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
I think I appreciate you. You actually did your own research, which a lot of people don't do. Say, oh, your prophet's a pedophile. You know, what do you feel about that? You know, they don't even go and look in this and say, you know. So I'd say seek knowledge. You know, Malcolm X said, you know, education is the passport to the future, and it's something that a lot of people, you know, tend to not hold to a high standard. Like, people don't even read books anymore, bro. You know, everyone's just glued to this thing that we call a cellular device and having our attention spans fried by short-term content. So I'd say just seek knowledge, bro. That's my last piece of advice to whatever audience would.
I love it, man. I would agree with that part for sure. To seek knowledge, regardless of what religious perspective you're coming from, to seek after the truth, right?
Seek after the truth, yeah.
For sure.
And I guarantee anybody that does seek the truth is going to find you. It's just up to you and the amount of effort you put into it. So.
Well, I really appreciate you talking today, dude.
Yeah,
that was
problem,
another awesome conversation, in addition to the ones that we
course.
had before. So
Yeah.
thanks again for getting together to do
problem,
that.
man.
That was really cool.
Yeah.